Death is the unyielding truth that binds us all, an inevitable, profound, and deeply intimate encounter with the finite nature of life. It arrives without warning, shattering the world we thought we knew. In its wake, grief emerges, often dismissed as something to fix or get over. But what if grief, in its suffocating pain, is not a burden to carry or something from which we need to move on? What if grief is instead a sacred invitation, an opening to feel more deeply, to connect in unimaginable ways, and to transform all that we knew to be true? I'm Laura Walton, and I'm so grateful you're here. Together, let's step into the uncharted terrain of death and grief, not as something to fear or avoid, but as a force that shapes us, breaks us, and ultimately remakes us. Let's meet it not with resistance, but with curiosity and courage. And let's do this on purpose. Okay, welcome back to the Grief on Purpose podcast. We're here today with a special guest, Jenny Robbins. Jenny, thank you for being here today. I appreciate that.
I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. Jenny, where do you live? Where are you coming from?
In Highlands Ranch, Colorado. It's a suburb of Denver.
Okay. How's Denver right now, weather-wise?
Right now, it's beautiful. We had the 3-day weekend of rain, and today is sunny and mid-70s and just beautiful.
Oh, great. Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for being here. I'd like to hear just your perspective of, because we don't know each other in real life, so your perspective of how we became connected and your interest in this project.
If my memory serves me, we became connected when I saw you reaching out on one of the grief websites or connections that I'm in. I think it was the network of compassionate bereavement care providers. And so I knew that this was not just any request, this was a request that had been vetted and was of quality. And it also spoke to me because yoga has been a part of my grief and my healing. And I had just recently written a piece actually on one of the experiences that comes to mind when I think of yoga and my grief. And I had shared that with you, and that resonated with you. So that's how we became acquainted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it does feel like this was a long time ago, several months back when we initially connected. But
yes.
Yeah. So yes, it was through the CBC, I think, Facebook group, which CBC is the Compassionate Bereavement Care. And I know I've done that training. I assume, have you done that training as well if you're a part of that group?
I have, and
Yeah.
the advanced, and any chance to train with Dr. Joe or Miss Foundation is something that I take advantage of.
Same. I know I've actually done that training like 3 different times.
Thinking about going back. That's great.
Yes. Have you done the yoga portion of the training?
I have not, but I've thought about it.
Okay. Are you a yoga teacher or practitioner?
I am not, just someone who likes to participate.
Okay. How long have you been practicing yoga?
Gosh, I think I was introduced to it in one of my jobs by somebody that was getting her hours for becoming a trainer, a leader, and a teacher. That's the word. And so she would give these free yoga classes for all my coworkers. So that was my introduction, and that was really fun to be able to do yoga after work.
Yeah, nice little treat
So
there.
probably a good 25 years ago.
Okay, good. And the CBC training, is that related to your work, or was your interest in that more personal?
Yes, well, both, honestly, as grief goes. So I am a licensed professional counselor in Colorado, and my specializations are trauma and grief. And what set me on that path was the death of my son almost 13 years ago now. So a few years after he died, I decided I want to go back to school and become a grief counselor because my grief counselor had been so instrumental in my healing.
Okay. What were you doing before his death?
the job that I mentioned. I was an executive administrative assistant in an accounting office. So maybe the polar opposite job to being a counselor.
Okay. And then how soon after his death did you make that decision to go to school and go down that path?
It was about 3 years before I started to think this could be a path for me. This is something I could do now. I think it wouldn't have been accessible to my mind, my grief brain, my memory, my processing and my healing. So it was about 3 years.
Okay. And it sounds like that you did that because you had such a good experience with your great grief counselor that you wanted to be able to do that with other people.
Yes, I thought that would be really meaningful. I tried to keep an open mind in grad school and thought there's so many directions I could go, but every project, every reflection, I just wanted it to be grief centered. And so I just finally embraced it and thought, okay, this is the path that I'm going to embrace.
And that's now what you do is you work with primarily
It
with
is.
grief. Yeah.
Yes. I
Yeah.
work with people who've experienced traumatic loss, overdose and suicide and loss of a child and sudden deaths and accidents. That's a lot of the work that I do. It's not all the work that I do. I work with other populations too, people in transition or people with some substance use issues or people with anxiety, for example.
Yeah. As it relates to death and loss, do you work specifically or only, I should say, with traumatic loss?
I would say most of my clients have experienced a traumatic loss, but not all.
Okay. Okay. Just through that lens, our paths are very similar. I experienced two significant deaths when I was in my 20s, and that at that point I didn't have much of a career path established, but that was what led me to go to grad school to become a therapist as well. So we've gone down those similar paths. Yeah. But I'd love to hear, if you're okay with describing this, your definition of or understanding of how you define traumatic loss as opposed to any other kind of loss.
I think a loss that is out of order, like the loss of a child, how Dr. Joe puts it, the person that did our training that we both did, is the loss of a child for any reason at any age. A loss that is very sudden, a loss that feels violent, a loss that shakes your assumption that the world is a safe place. And I think it can be very personalized. What might be a traumatic loss for one person might not feel like a traumatic loss for another person. They might not have those physiological, spiritual, mental, psychological reactions that someone else might.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This is something that I think about frequently because I hear at least people use the word trauma to describe a lot of things, some of which I might be curious if they are actually traumatic or not, or maybe it's too soon, maybe to me at least, it feels too soon to label that as trauma. So I guess just for you, I'm curious if you ever have an experience where it has felt to you as if the word trauma is not used correctly in that terminology, and what the impact of that might possibly be.
Probably early on after my loss, and probably soon after my training and schooling, I might have been more sensitive to that word. I know I'm guilty just today, honestly, just today at a meeting this morning, we were talking about snakes and bugs. And I told the story about a bug in my car. And I said, yeah, that was a traumatic memory. So I'm guilty too of mislabeling something that's traumatic. And I probably wouldn't have done that in my early acute grief. But certainly I think that it's kind of overused, as I just illustrated, that I'm guilty of too. Kind of like, oh, someone may call somebody narcissistic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a word that's easy to, I think, just throw around. And I don't know that what the right answer to this is, but when I hear that, I just get curious of what the impacts of that might be.
Right. I think that's a really good question and a good reminder
Yeah.
that words are important.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, so you went into that field of working with grief and with traumatic grief because of your own experiences. So are you okay with sharing a little bit of your story of what your experience with grief and death is and has been?
Sure. I'll try to keep it succinct. As you know, I could probably talk all day and
Yes.
tomorrow and the next day.
Yeah.
Try to keep my story short for our purposes. My son, his name is Cade, and 12 years ago, he was 19 and had just become a whitewater rafting guide in the mountains of Colorado, doing what his dad did in the summer. So, following those footsteps. And he absolutely loved it. Sadly, only 6 weeks or so after starting his rookie training, he was not training with his rafting guides that day. He had a day off of the river and he met some kids at a skate park. And the kids invited him to a party. Somebody bought him a bottle of rum and he drank too much. And then the next day, his body was found in a small town lake between the party and his dad's house. So he didn't make it home walking to his dad's house. That's the very short story. The longer story that I won't tell, but that I'll just share a little piece of, is that he was kicked out of the party and his skateboard was broken and his backpack was thrown about, the contents of his backpack. So it's presumably a terrible accident and he died alone. That is what all the professionals and the first responders and police and everything, that's what everything leads to, is that it was a terrible accident. And as is so much the case with a sudden loss or any loss, honestly, there are some questions still and some uncertainties.
Mm-hmm.
So that is the short version of what happened almost 13 years ago. My grief, of course, the first couple years were extremely acute. And now I feel like I'm a more seasoned griever. And while it's still probably the biggest thing in my life, the thing that touches the most parts of my life, it is softer. And I think it's not just softer with time, I think it's softer with my intentionality and my leaning into the grief experience, going to my grief counselor, going to grief retreats, doing the trainings a little bit later on when I was ready to do trainings for counseling and for grief. My practices that I have, my rituals, my honoring and remembering him, speaking about him, integrating him in my life. I think these are the things that helps it feel softer and less acute and just more a part of me and my life.
Yeah. Yeah. So in different ways, it sounds like you found a way to thread him into your day to day and your bigger life as a whole.
Yes. Right now, I sit in my home office, which, thank you, Cade. He's sharing his bedroom with me.
Mhm.
And it was his room when he lived here. And then it became a catch-all after he moved out. And then after he died, it became a place. I fixed it up and it was a place for all of his things and the things I remember him by, special things, a special place to spend some time. There's pictures that surround me. There's lots of the things I've done in my grief in this place. And then when COVID began, I was ready to share the space. So it wasn't just Cade's space, it was Cade's and my space. And so I moved a desk in here, and this is where I meet with clients when I meet from home, online, virtually. So I like that terminology that you used, that threading him into my life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really what we're doing. Are those pictures of him behind you on the
They
bulletin board?
are. Yeah.
I was thinking they probably were. I can't see him closely, but even just having those right there as a part of your everyday, he's there, he's front and center there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Behind me, in front of me, to
Yeah.
each side too.
There's something I really love about it sounds like the therapy clients you work with online, you're doing them from this space. And I love the fact of you just being in his room, in the room of the person who is the reason that you are doing the work that you're doing now. There's something really beautiful about that.
Thank you.
Uh, so, are you able to describe how it was or why it was maybe that this is the way that you chose to manage your grief, is to learn how to integrate it, to bring it into your life? How did that become your path as opposed to any other path?
That is such an intriguing question. It's one I've thought about over the years, but maybe not really journaled about or really specifically reflected on. So I don't have a ready answer for you. I think it's a lot of different factors. One is that my mom already worked for a grief center at the time of Cade's death. She just happened to be volunteering at a grief center in Michigan. And so when Cade died, she had some understanding of how profound this loss was. And right away, she connected me with a local grief center and a grief informed and trained therapist. So my therapist is a thanatologist. I didn't even know there was such a thing. And I didn't even know that you couldn't, or that anyone had that specialized training. So I think that was part of it, that it had a really good, solid foundation from the beginning of learning from people that kind of knew about profound loss. I think another aspect is just the things that resonated with me, the books, the authors, Dr. Joanne Cacciatore. Just, I had these, and my grief therapist, I had these people in my life that were talking about grief and integrating it in their lives and unapologetically and not pathologizing this reaction. And that just resonated with me so much. And I wanted to do that too.
Mhm.
But as for why I leaned into the workshops, grief centers, I think some people that I've learned now tend to be more instrumental grievers. And then other people are more intuitive grievers where everything is internal. I tend to be a mix of both, but I really was more of an instrumental griever, doing those outward mourning and learning things in the beginning that just felt good and right for me to have the next thing. Like, oh, I can get to the next thing. And then I can get to the next thing. That was helpful and anchoring for me.
Yeah. Do you have an example of what you mean by that, the instrumental grievers, what that would have looked like for you?
For me, it looked like seeing my grief therapist regularly, reading grief books, although I couldn't open a book right away. I didn't want to see those words in black and white. It took a few months for that. Googling what to do when your child dies and finding Miss Foundation and a bereaved parents retreat and our local grief center and its healing art days and other offerings. So those are just some examples of getting things in my calendar and going to those things. Another thing is going to grief groups. I have gone to my local chapter of the Compassionate Friends, which is support for the loss of a child, grandchild, or sibling. I've gone since 7 weeks after Cade died. Excuse me. I've got a tickle in my throat.
Mm.
I'll start that over. I went to the Compassionate Friends since 7 weeks after Cade died. Now I'm in a leadership position, but of course I always get a lot out of going, whether I'm leading a meeting or a participant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So was 7 weeks after his death about the time that you started doing any of this stuff?
Probably.
Yeah.
It's probably about the time I was able to emerge and be a part of the world in some fragile ways, some slow ways.
Okay. And it sounds like you've found a lot of ways and a lot of people who support the practice of being more intentional and approaching grief from that non-pathological stance. I always stumble over that word, but non-pathologized.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
It's amazing the connections that you can make
Yes.
at grief groups, at anything grief related. It's just kind of cuts away anything that's surfacey, and you can get right to the heart of who we are and connecting with each other.
Yeah. Did you come up against people or practices or approaches in some form or another that didn't feel like that did feel like they were more pathologizing or didn't help you to lean into the grief?
Not that I can think of, although plenty of those examples have been shared in various grief groups and with various friends. Personally, while there might have been some statements made that felt extremely insensitive, I think that was mostly because I was extremely sensitive, and the people around me who may have made those statements had no idea what this kind of loss was like and had no idea how to support me. As we know, society doesn't do a great job of supporting grievers. And so we're all a product of society. So while there were some insensitive comments, luckily everybody in my life who I may have felt was insensitive at one point or another has kind of come along with me as I've learned and become better supports.
Okay. So overall, have you felt generally supported through your grief by people in your life?
I have. And I think a big part of that is knowing that it can't all come from one place.
Mm-hmm.
It can't all come from home. It can't all come from my close family. It can't all come from my extended family. It can't all come with my old friends that I've had for decades. For me, it has to come from different places. I get different things out of different supports, especially the grief groups. I knew that I would have a struggle if I expected the same support that I got in a grief group to come from the people closest to me.
Mm-hmm.
They're all different kinds of support.
Right. Yeah. It sounds like you really had a strong level of awareness in navigating your grief and in navigating maybe what your needs were and where you could get those needs met.
I think that came with time. And in the beginning, I just knew it was big and I knew that I couldn't do it alone. So I found those people and those places that could teach me.
Yeah. It's a process for sure.
Yes.
Yeah. From the little bit of the story of Cade's death that you did share, it sounds like there's still some questions you have, though. Is that correct?
Yes, I think that what is the word? Closure is a myth in most, if not all, losses. And so, yeah, once in a while there are questions. One thing that my therapist and I worked on, my grief therapist, was, no matter what digging we do, no matter what investigations there are, no matter who brings who to court, none of it is going to bring Cade back. And no one is going to necessarily have Cade's best interest in mind, or mine for that matter. And so we made the decision together that I would focus on my healing rather than going down the road of trying to get every last question answered. I got to a place where I trusted the authorities and their, I don't want to say best guess, but their investigation. I don't know if everyone in my world came to that place, but I came to that place and just knew that my focus and energy was going to be best spent on my healing and my continued relationship with Cade.
Yeah. Did you have to be really intentional about getting yourself to that place?
Yes. Yeah, there were a lot of intentional reflections and conversations about that because there were lots of choices to be
Right.
made. Yeah.
And what is your continuing relationship with Cade?
One of the things that I try to do is I try to live with Cade's sense of adventure. He was always up for an adventure, for something outdoors, for being in the mountains. So these things are important to me to get to the mountains when I can. One of the things we do around the anniversary of his death every year is we go whitewater rafting, and we go with the river guides that were in his rookie class and his trainers as much as we can, because people kind of go their own directions too. But, and then we invite his friends to go, friends both from the mountain town and from Denver, where he grew up. So it's been a really special gathering over the years, really in Cade's element, literally in water.
Mhm.
He's an Aquarius. So that has been something that's felt very anchoring as well over the years.
Mhm. And that's continued on. What did you say? It's been 12 years or 13?
This June 29th will be 13 years.
Okay. Yeah. And it sounds like it's become an ongoing, very intentional practice, if you will. Yeah.
Yes, it
Yeah.
has.
Okay. And so on the topic of practice, where do you see the intersection of your yoga practice and your grief?
Yoga is something I enjoyed before Cade died, and it's something that felt accessible to me after he died, not right after, because not much felt accessible. Getting out and doing anything isn't something I did for the first couple years. I remember writing a piece, an essay on a friend's blog, and it was something like, I remember saying something like, it took me 2.5 years to get off the couch. So that's what it felt like. And when I did, I thought yoga is what felt comfortable. I was familiar with it. It was gentle. It could be more quiet, definitely intentional. And then getting back on my mat after Cade died, there were tears on my mat. There's really soulful music and soulful messages during a yoga practice. As he is in most places in my life, he was with me, I feel, on some level when I would practice yoga.
Mhm.
One way that I practice yoga that you heard a little of the story before is it's called Yoga on the Rocks. And we're lucky to be in driving distance of Red Rocks Amphitheater. And they have Yoga on the Rocks, yoga on Saturday mornings in the summer. And me, along with another friend in the grief community that I met at a grief event, another bereaved mom who happened to do yoga, we get season passes together. So we get to, our sons are always present and part of our conversations and our catching up after a long winter. And they just continue to be part of our lives in that way. And it feels
Mhm.
like a really special thing to integrate the beauty of nature and to be with someone that knows and understands my grief and to be doing yoga.
Mhm. Yeah. So there's the physical practice of yoga, the asana, which it sounds to me like you're pointing at that as being an important part of your practice. Are there other elements, though, of a yoga practice that are also important to you in your grief?
I really resonate with the limb of yoga about around ritual and around that intentionality. I look at my annual whitewater rafting as ritual.
Yeah.
And the birthday party that we throw for Cade in January is a ritual. Also, my season pass to Yoga on the Rocks with my grief friend and 2,000 other friends is ritual for
Yeah.
me. And I find ritual to be very comforting.
Yeah. Yeah. Showing up consistently. Do you know the name of that? When you said that, my mind went to tapas. I was thinking of tapas. Is that what you're referring to, or is it a different practice?
Honestly, I don't know the names of the
Okay.
8 limbs. I just know in my kind of cursory reading,
Yeah.
a little high level reading, one of the limbs talked about having ritual or having practice,
Hmm.
your own practice in your life.
Yeah. Part of the reason I asked the question, just because if it were tapas, it very well could be, but tapas is a practice, is a showing up consistently, but also showing up sometimes when you don't want to show up
Oh,
because that's what
sure.
you've committed to. So I was just curious about that for you. If with any of these things you're talking about, if there are ever times when you actually don't really want to do it, but you do it because that's what you've committed to.
I have to laugh because Yoga on the Rocks is at 7 in the morning. So there's a lot of
So
that
yes.
setting the alarm and it's cold in the morning. Of course, it
Mhm.
heats up really quick with the sun on the rocks. But yeah, there definitely is some discipline to it too.
Yeah, but there's something about it that keeps you committed to that as a practice.
Yes, even just
Mhm.
the drive in the foothills. I might see deer on the side of the road. Definitely, there's a small window of time that things are green in Colorado. And a lot of those yoga practices, things are green on the side of the roads. And of course, the winding switchbacks driving up to Red Rocks. It's just a beautiful drive with views also.
Yeah, yeah. Do you think because it's Cade and this is all around your grief from Cade's death, that's what keeps your commitment going?
I think he's definitely a big part of it,
Hmm.
showing up for him.
As opposed to if you agreed to go to just a 7 a.m. workout class with a friend, right? Like it may not have the same fire. I would guess it may not have the same fire as it would if this were for Cade or a practice of Cade or connecting with Cade.
I think you make a good point. It would be a very different feeling if it was just a boot camp at Red Rocks or something like that.
Yeah, yeah,
It's very soulful, very soul oriented rather than just a physical practice.
yeah. Do you feel Cade in your practice, your asana practice?
I do. I feel him when I hear the screeching falcons above us.
Hmm.
Sometimes they're really loud and obnoxious, but it makes me think of how he loved classifying animals. And he would be able to tell me, Mom, that's a hawk versus or a falcon versus a hawk, for example. And those little moments are meaningful and just bring some Cade depth to the experience.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Do you have any beliefs about death? What happens when we die?
I don't know if I can articulate them. I do. I don't. Okay, I'll distill it in a question I was asked. I was asked, Jenny, do you believe in God? And I said, I'm not sure, but I believe in Cade.
Mm.
So I think somehow, some way, through the signs, through the sense of presence, somehow, I don't know if this is just figuratively or literally, somehow Cade is present in my life. And I don't know how to explain how. And I don't necessarily believe in the same kind of God I was raised with as growing up Catholic.
So does that mean, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Some kind of a gray area.
It is, yeah. I mean, it
Yeah.
is a gray area. Does that mean, though, that with Cade's death, your belief system may have changed a bit?
If I'm being honest, it already was on the path to changing. And absolutely, Cade's death just made me rethink everything and reflect on everything, especially big existential things, spirituality and religion and my beliefs and life and death, of course. So, yeah, I would say that things did change after he died. However, those changes were already taking place in my adulthood.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think there can be deep spirituality and sense of awe and sense of numinous experiences. Numinous meaning like otherworldly or something larger than yourself. I think we don't need religion to have those feelings or to feel like we're a part of something bigger or to feel deeply connected with our departed.
Yeah. So it sounds like you've had some of those deep, awe-inspiring experiences with or through Cade.
Yes.
Have you had any other significant deaths in your life?
I've had grandparents die, and I wouldn't say that those were traumatic deaths. I'm really lucky that I had my grandparents in my life for such a long time. Many of my grandparents, some I didn't know that died before I was born, but I was well into my adulthood when my paternal grandma died and then my maternal grandfather. And just a few years ago, my maternal grandma died at age 99. So I've had my grandparents in my life for a long time, and I'm so happy about that. So I'd have to say no, Cade was a big, big loss. We did have a miscarriage, and that was very hard and sad. And that was before Cade's death. So there's a special place in my heart for that experience too.
Yeah. So how would you say the experience then with your grief with Cade's death has changed you?
Do you remember that book that was out decades ago called Don't Sweat the Small Stuff? And it's all small stuff.
I do. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like that there are just other things that are more important than maybe daily surface stressors. I think that kind of helps me not be too stressed out.
Is that different than how you used to be?
Probably to an extent.
Yeah.
I know that I don't know if you want to call it dark humor or gallows humor, but in grief groups, we laugh about, and they thought that was important, or they thought that was stressful. When you've had a loss, a profound loss, other things, other stressors just take on a little different tone.
They do. Do you imagine that staying true for you for the rest of your life?
I think that intentionality plays a part there as well, because we can get sucked into life's dramas and things like that. I love that through my grief journey and learning, that I've incorporated really helpful practices in my life, like mindfulness and self compassion. All of these were introduced to me in ways around grieving. And I think these are really helpful tools to have.
Yeah. So these are all practices that were new to you with grief. They came with grief for you. Is that right?
Yes, they
Okay. Those are some really helpful tools to have in general, in life in general, but absolutely to have in grief. Those are really helpful tools.
think that I had heard the word trauma and I had heard the word mindfulness. And until Cade died, and then later, a few years later, after I went to school to study counseling, I just didn't understand the depth of a traumatic experience and how calming our nervous system is important, how being in our window of tolerance, that is the place where we learn and we can grieve and we can connect with other people. I don't think I had much of an understanding of that before.
Yeah. I'm glad that it sounds like it wasn't just one person, but it was many people, many practices, but whatever those were, that you found your way to those, or those found their way to you when you needed it, because not everybody gets that.
I'm glad too. I think that different things I read resonated. Like I remember learning that people who had lost a child or had experienced a traumatic loss were more susceptible to cancer, to
Mm,
early death, to sickness. And so I took that message as it's extra important for me to take care of myself, to tend to my grieving, to tend to my feelings, because we already had those chips stacked against us.
yeah.
That with this stress, this existential stress, this loss, this thing that is with us every day, it's really important to have those calming practices in order to stay well.
Yeah. So in your work, you might work with a parent who has lost a child. Is that right? Yeah. And how is that for you to be in the presence of somebody who's experienced something similar to the big thing you've experienced?
Sometimes it can be very heavy. I would say that's a minority of the time. A majority of the time, I feel so grateful for the training I've had, for the mentors I've had. I feel grateful that this person can have somebody that understands, walk with them, and it feels fulfilling rather than re-triggering. I have enough of my own loss. I have enough of my own pain and drama and trauma and all of the above. I really don't feel that I take on other people's. It makes me remember my early grief. And when you can see it in someone's person, on their face, in their body, and their body language, and what they're saying, I remember those painful weeks and months. However, I don't get thrown back into that, probably in part, because of the intentional work that I've done also.
Yeah, definitely. It sounds like you put in the work to be able to get to a certain place in yourself with your grief, to be able to sit with it
Mm-hmm.
and stay
Mm-hmm.
with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. In case someone in Colorado is listening and interested, do you have a name of your practice that you would like to share?
Yes, I am at a group practice called South Platte Counseling. It's in Englewood, and I offer in person as well as online. I'm EMDR trained, so that is a type of a trauma, very structured trauma modality, very studied. And I like that modality. And I'm glad that I have other training in grief and loss as well because the EMDR is so structured. So, yes, feel free to reach out.
Thanks for that little plug.
Of course.
Yeah. Did you do any EMDR yourself in your own therapy?
A client recently asked me that,
Mm,
and I have not. I feel that I would. I really like the modality and I like the insights that I have seen it help people with and the softening of the traumatic and visceral experiences and pieces of their losses. I'm not opposed to it. I guess I haven't felt the need to do that myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I do EMDR too. And yeah, I can, in my
Have
opinion,
you
definitely.
gone through it as a participant?
Yeah. Yes, I've done it over on various topics, but yes, I've done it multiple times as a participant. I'm curious, do you feel like, would there be an element of stuff that you would feel would be appropriate for that?
I'd have to do some reflecting on that. I'm sure that I could, if I thought about it, I could find some sticky points,
Mm-hmm.
honestly. Those places that are hard to go, questions maybe that I don't have answers to.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I could see that. Like, how do we live with, or how do you live with,
Yeah,
having questions that don't have answers?
that might be rich area.
Yeah. Just a question right now. Do you have an answer to that? Like, there's a lot of unanswered questions, it sounds like, and how is that something that you live with?
One of the first things I learned in my graduate counseling program is that uncertainty is one of the hardest human experiences. And that kind of stuck with me. I thought, oh, I had no idea that would be emphasized right
Mm,
away. I never thought about that. And then fast forward, learning more about grief. I remember learning about Pauline Boss and her work in ambiguous loss. And one of her examples was even parents whose children are missing and they don't know where they are, what happened to them, even the majority of those parents can reintegrate into life and have fulfilling lives, re-engage in life. And that I just found that astounding that, wow, even with the biggest unanswered question, people can create a new normal. And I'm not trying to minimize that horrendous loss in any way. However, I just thought that was just a really hope-filled message.
yeah, we have the ability to do that.
Yes, that
Mhm.
even in the most horrendous experiences, we can survive and even thrive.
Yeah. Are you somebody who, so now, people know your story, they know what you've been through. So when somebody dies, are you someone who people in your world will direct the people to you? Go talk to her?
Sometimes, and I'm very grateful when that
Mhm.
happens.
Yeah. What do you say to those people who maybe this is very, very recent, the death, and they're coming to you? Is there a particular first message, at least, that you try to get across?
I think that I am more of a listener in the beginning to whatever it is they need to share. It's going to be different with everybody. I might begin with the trainings that I've had and the losses that I've experienced, just to kind of not put them on the spot to speak right away and to know who they're in the room with. However, I do begin by listening because what might be top of mind for them might be something that happened a year ago with the loss or that day or that moment, or it might be the interaction with their boss a day ago at work. So I just let them guide those first interactions. I try not to give messages that are too hope filled or future focused. As we know, those can feel, I don't know, less than sincere, or it might not be fitting with what the person is experiencing at all. And so it's not up to me to wrap it up in a tidy bow. It's up to me to be able to be there for whatever they need to process.
I like that. I think you're a good therapist.
Oh, thanks.
I wish I had found you when I, needed it the most in those early days of grief. Actually, where my story differs from yours is because or one of the many places where my story differs from yours, but is I couldn't find good therapeutic
Mm,
support. And I thought that was ridiculous, just given how common death is. So, but that was my motivation to become a therapist. But yeah, just hearing you talk, I think if I had found somebody like you, that might have changed things in a different way for me.
Well, as we know, Dr. Jo is an amazing teacher, and
she
those are some of the things that she taught me. I was excited to go to grad school. I love school. It was amazing. And I was absolutely more excited to take her grief-focused training, and it's just been amazing experiences.
Yes. Yeah. Dr. Joanne Cacciatore. So she's out of Phoenix, originally, I'll say, I don't know, I forget where she actually comes from, but that's how I was connected with her because I'm in Arizona. But she does a lot of, just for listeners who may not know, she does a lot of work around traumatic grief and trainings around traumatic grief, and has a care farm in Sedona or outside of Sedona. There's a whole lot of work in that arena. How did you find her, Jenny?
Honestly, I was Googling grief retreats, and this is back in 2014 or 15, and I found a traumatic grief retreat for bereaved parents, and we made it work.
Was that at her place in Sedona?
It was. So her care farm wasn't built yet. So it was at a resort outside of Sedona, and it was me and 49 other bereaved parents.
Wow.
It was just such an enlightening, spiritual, soulful, healing experience. Just one of those life experiences I'll never forget. And I thought in my mind, I don't know how, but somehow I'm going to see this woman again. I'm going to be in her presence again, somehow. Grad school wasn't even on my radar. And then later, when it was on my radar, I was already on her mailing list, and I saw that she offered the grief and trauma training. So that definitely informs my practice a lot.
Have you been to the care farm now that it's built?
I have, yes. So when I did later on, when I became a counselor, it was built. And so when I took the CBC, the first training, it was built but not operational. So we got to tour it. And then when I went and did my second advanced training, it was operational, and we got to spend time there.
Yes, same for me.
It's a great place.
Yeah. Yeah, there's rescue animals there. I love that element of it. Yeah. Okay. Well, we've talked about a lot, and I'm sure, as you said earlier, we could talk about this for days. But in the interest of time, is there anything that still feels unsaid for you for today?
Thanks for asking. No, I think that we covered a lot of territory. I just feel profoundly grateful for what you are putting into the world from your experience that was less than perfect on so many levels. So the support you received was less than perfect, and now you're putting so many wonderful, meaningful things in the world. So thank you.
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you for saying that, acknowledging it. I appreciate it. And thank you for taking the time out. I guess thank you for the work that you do too, separate from this, but thank you for taking the time out today to talk with me and to share a little bit of Cade with us. And we appreciate that.
Thank you so much. It's always great to talk about Cade.
Thank you for being here with me, Laura Walton, and my incredible guest on Grief on Purpose. Your presence is a gift, and I'm so grateful you're walking this path with us. For more connection and resources, you'll find everything you need in the show description. To my guests, thank you for sharing your person with us today. It is truly an honor to know your story. I'm your host, Laura Walton. Until next time, be kind to yourself and remember you're not alone in your grief. We are here on purpose.